Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we're talking about an important concept. It is intimacy anxiety.
And because anxiety feels so uncomfortable, then it starts to create this barrier with intimacy. So it's like, I don't even want to be physically or emotionally close to this person.
We define it for you. We talk about how it might be appearing in your relationship.
Sometimes people will even create conflict at night to sabotage the idea of intimacy.
Who would ever do something like that? And then we give you 2 steps in order to get intimate with your partner to feel emotionally and physically connected.
Just start the conversation, start those little low-stake intimacy moments, start the non-sexual affections throughout the day to build that connection. So then my nervous system now feels safe around the idea of intimacy. Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin. And this week, we did, if you haven't already heard it, we did a 4-part series on emotional and physical intimacy. And just from the feedback we've got from the audience, it's clear that you want to hear more about intimacy.
And so our goal for today was to really break down what intimacy anxiety means, because we know it's one of the most common symptoms when there is a breakdown or disconnection in intimacy. It's this anxiety piece, and really helping you understand, is that what it is? Intimacy anxiety, what is it? How does it impact the relationship? How does it impact us on an individual level? And also tools to get out of that intimacy anxiety so we can feel more connected and free in our body.
And I think that intimacy anxiety is just a very natural outcome to when you're feeling disconnected from your partner for a long period of time. You get like literally physically anxious. It feels like, oh, is something going to happen? Is it not happening? What's wrong? Why aren't we connected? And the difference that I've always felt between stress and anxiety is when it's like it starts to get into your body a little bit, like you feel it.
And because anxiety feels so uncomfortable, then it starts to create this barrier with intimacy. So it's like, I don't even want to be physically or emotionally close to this person because I don't want to experience whatever that feeling is. And some people wouldn't even call it anxiety. They're like, oh, we just shouldn't be together, or there's just this breakdown. But really what we know from a lot of the work we've done ourselves and with other couples, it's anxiety. We don't want to feel it. So then we push it away. And then couples come in like, oh, we haven't been close in years, months, whatever it is.
Well, and it's so interesting, right? Because it's like intimacy anxiety starts with just a feeling of like, oh, like something's wrong. Like why this is my partner, my wife, my husband, I'm supposed to be connected with them and I'm not. So it's first just like this feeling of like, this isn't right. But then it becomes an obstacle. Like it actually like exasperates things. It makes it worse because then you're like, if you sort of approach anything that's intimate, whether it's an emotionally intimate connected moment or physically connected, you're like afraid of it or anxious. You're anxious about it. So you try to sort of guard yourself from it, which then makes it worse. So,
well, and even so, like I'm watching you as you talk. So some people watch this through the YouTube videos. Some people just listen to audio, but like you have that like freeze reaction. And this is important because some people's nervous systems actually do get into flight, fight, or freeze around intimacy. And that's just the one thing we really try to support individuals and couples with, that you do not want to be in danger zone around physical or emotional closeness. And so I think maybe just identifying some of the ways, like the signs that it's happening, the way it manifests, if there is intimacy anxiety, just like kind of like to piggyback on what you were saying, but like the overthinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's what like sort of bridges the gap between like the emotional side of intimacy and then the physical side is like, if I'm feeling anxious about our connection, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a moment where we're like, oh, like we're supposed to maybe go beyond just like this being a conversation and us like hooking up, you know, like having a physically intimate moment. And if I bring that anxiety in, I mean, that's a huge barrier, you know? So, you know, so the first thing we want to do is like show like, okay, like, how do I know if I'm listening to this, how do I know if there is, if this label, you know, intimacy anxiety is something that's existing in my relationship? Like, how does it show up? What are the signs? Yeah. How does it manifest? Right.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm just going to use my own personal experience.
Right.
And also like, I would say the experience of many couples I've worked with, but it's like this feeling of on edge, like, oh my gosh, like if it's date night tonight, what does that mean? Or even when nighttime approaches and kids are in bed, there's this feeling of like on edge. And then sometimes people will even create conflict at night to sabotage the idea of intimacy.
Who would ever do something like that? Who would ever do that, Tara?
So the feeling on edge, especially during intimate moments, I know that when I'm talking with other couples around like even snuggling, like there's not even safety around just touch because they think it's automatically going to have to end up in going into like physical intimacy or anything. So there's not even a softening of the body. Just if somebody wanted to snuggle, it's like there's this body tension inside there. You're avoiding your partner's closeness or advances, again, because you have this other part in your brain of anxiety. Like if I avoid advances, if I avoid this closeness, then it won't have to happen. So I won't have to experience this anxiety. But what we know is it actually just reinforces and makes the anxiety bigger.
Yeah.
And so avoiding closeness or partner's advances, it literally just creates more anxiety because now we're in our head and creating this narrative. And now the anxiety gets bigger. And
and I'll even back it up. So, you know, you went right into like sort of that anxiety around physical connection, but I can back it up even farther into that emotional side again, which is that people just get like anxious or it feels weird when they're just alone with their partner. Like I've definitely had that reported in many couples that I've worked with where they're like when we go out to dinner or if everybody's out of the house, like it's like we almost just don't know how to talk anymore. And so, you know, one of the symptoms, one of the ways it manifests is you just avoid it, you know, whether it's you avoid, you move into different bedrooms or you start sleeping on opposite sides of the bed.
A child sleeps with you.
Yeah. Or you always go out with friends, or you always do things that are related to your kids or work. Like you just avoid any time that you could really connect, you know, and whether that's physically or emotionally, like you just start finding ways not to do it.
Okay, I have another one too, because it's subtle, but it's like the physical appearance piece. Like if you see that I'm wearing cute undies, I know where your brain goes.
Where?
And so then I would stop. I would just like wear like my not cute undies because I was like, I don't want him to think that there's even a chance. Like, and I wasn't consciously thinking of this. Now I'm like, right, I'm just going to wear cute undies whenever. And there's no assumptions. There's no narrative. But there's that decrease in like physical appearance or wearing maybe sexy clothing because like, oh, if I wear this, then bam, my partner is automatically going to think, oh, it's on.
Yeah.
And it's subtle, but I see it all the time. People start wearing baggier clothing, not wearing makeup, not putting on cute little lingerie underneath. I mean, I'm speaking for the women. I can't speak for the men.
You know, and I think like what this is beginning to talk about is, you know, we can put a broad umbrella is like you just find ways to disconnect from your partner, right? Like another is like, you know, I don't want to be intimate emotionally or physically with my partner if all I'm seeing is their faults. If all I'm seeing are the aspects of their personality that maybe are somewhat problematic, we all have aspects of ourselves that are problematic. And if that's all I see about you, if every time I look at you, I'm like, oh, I'm looking for things that maybe aren't appealing, it's like we tend to become really critical with our partner as a way to protect ourselves, right? Because if we're looking at our partner, we're like, oh, look how beautiful she is, or how sweet, or what a kind thing she just did. Those draw me closer. And if I feel like, it's different where you are in that intimate disconnection. But if I fear rejection, I might find ways to not even put myself in the place where I'm going to get rejected,
So we're talking about this, right? And it all sounds like, wow, like there's so many different signs. There's so many ways it manifests. And like what we want to do today is like, it can be different. It can feel different. There's so many reasons why intimacy anxiety happens. It could be like in my own case, right? Past trauma that shows up later in life for me.
Yep.
There's that fear of rejection or judgment.
I can own that. Yeah. That I might become anxious about it because I just don't want to get rejected anymore.
Low self-esteem, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times, especially after moms have babies, like my body doesn't feel the same way anymore and I don't like it. So how can I even let my partner like look at me when I don't even want to look at myself?
Yeah. Yeah. We've done a lot recently. We've been on a lot of other podcasts. And when you kind of get on other podcasts, they ask you like, hey, what do you maybe want to talk about? You give them topics. And one of the topics we put in that is like mismatched libidos, that one person has a higher desire to either connect or a higher desire to have sex. And that is like, everybody is like, yes, let's talk about that. And that, I gotta say, is probably top 3 reasons that you might have some intimacy anxiety, is just that one person has a higher need to connect in one way or the other, and the other person has a lower. And then that just like tension creates anxiety.
And then there's the performance anxiety, like, right? Whether it's through past experiences or something happening now, like, what if I can't perform? What if I'm not able to please my partner in the way I want to? What if there's been all of that criticism and judgment there? So now I'm just like,
what if I'm just, men and women have different reasons that they might have performance issues during sex. But what if it's just that? It's not about like a disconnection between the two of you, but just you're fearful that like, man, I'm not going to be able to perform. Then my partner might take it personal, or they might judge me. Oh, like, of course you're going to get anxious about that.
I'll just say, going through this perimenopause, whatever this god awfulness is, like I now have performance anxiety. Like what if it feels like everything stopped working. So I'm aware of it and I'm working on it, but like I'm experiencing it for sure, but I get to talk to you about it, which bleeds into like the next piece is poor communication skills. Like if you're not talking about all the things that could happen and how intimacy anxiety could manifest, you're going to both be very stuck in it. So poor communication skills also leads to intimacy anxiety, IA, not AI, IA. Attachment styles, like let's just say someone grows up in a home where emotional and physical closeness was not portrayed, was not cultivated. It was actually not safe to do so. So it's just going to be really hard for that individual to feel comfortable with that type of closeness.
And then I think like most things in life, it's like a collection. Like it's like 5% of this, 10% of this, 40% of this. That these are things, that's certainly what we've experienced in our relationship. There was a sparkle of, or a dash of like past trauma. It's a little bit of feeling rejected. It's some performance anxiety. It's bad communication about all 4 of those things.
Life changes and transitions after baby.
Yes. So there's many reasons that you might have become emotionally or physically disconnected from your partner. That disconnection then can lead to avoidance and anxiety.
Intimacy, anxiety.
Yep. And so that's the baseline. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about intimacy, anxiety, and we're about to go into like, okay, like how are some ways that you can address this?
Yay. We like tools.
So the blessing here is that the solutions to intimacy anxiety, or some of the steps you can take to dealing with it, are actually intimacy building. You know, that's because that at the end of the day is going to be what's going to relieve intimacy anxiety, is actually feeling intimately connected with your partner, right? So, but I want to start off first with a real, like, you know, this is a through line to when you're dealing with anything that's challenging within your relationship, is when you have any discussion about it, or you're working towards any solution, or you're using any tool, the when, where, and how are incredibly important, right? It's like, okay, so my partner and I are about to have a conversation about our intimate connection, the anxiety I feel. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I'll learn about maybe some of the anxiety that they might feel. Well, let's make sure that when we talk about it, where we talk about it, and how we talk about it, meaning like sort of what is the emotional state that the two of you are in as you enter into the conversation. That's incredibly important, because like if I do it at 10 o'clock at night,
or just bring it up out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I do it, you know, how I come in kind of like upset, and where is, you know, in the, you know, the middle of a TV show, and neither of us are really present. We're not even looking at each other. Well, what is the chance of success there, right? So asking you and your partner, like, hey, we want to talk about something that's a little more sensitive, but maybe connecting. When's the best time to do it? Where should we do it, where we're going to be uninterrupted, and we both are sort of like in a really, you know, balanced mindset.
And I feel like, just to piggyback on that, there has to be an agreement that we're both receptive to this conversation. And if one of us feels, right, that we're starting to get, you know, we say out of our window of tolerance, that you both agree, let's take a break, because we want this to be the start of our new intimacy story, which is our next podcast. I'm so excited. And so really making that agreement, right? Because then maybe the next question, we want to just give you a few questions that can start this conversation that, to me, feel really safe, and it's not too much, it's not too overwhelming. But right after you've decided, let's have this conversation, it's really important for both of us. Let's set it up in an environment that feels really calming, conducive to us. That next question is, you know, what makes you feel safe enough to be vulnerable with me?
Yeah.
Right?
I love that, because it's like, one, vulnerability has sort of worked its way into the vernacular of pop culture, that like you hear it on TV shows, you know, you definitely hear it in pop psychology. You definitely hear it from like real big thought leaders, is that if we have vulnerable moments with our partners, we more deeply connect with them. It is intimate.
And it's things like, what make you feel safe enough to be vulnerable with me? Like when I can just share with EJ and he's not defending himself. Like, I just need him to, we call it heart with ears. Like, that feels so good when he's not, like, I can see if his mind's churning and he's not being present. So if we're asking each other this question, I'm going to say, when I really truly feel that you're present with me, and even though if you might, like, you know, start to get into this response, I can tell that you're doing the work to stay present. That makes me feel really safe. Now I feel like I can be vulnerable with you. And what would your answer be? Like, if one of them.
Let's see. Ask me the question one more time.
What makes you feel safe enough to be vulnerable with me?
It's when you're truly like curious, like, and I can tell you're asking me a question because you really want to hear the answer, not because you're sort of leading me towards what feels like a fault, or, you know, just when there's like this general like openness. And so I know that's like a little abstract, but for me, like right now, like I can really feel like as we've been recording this podcast today, there's like a softness in your face, you know? And so like for me, you know, like I really struggle with other people's anger, you know? And so when I see that you're coming from like this like open-hearted place and it's really like caring, like that feels like super safe to me.
See, I love that. I think that should actually be the first question after you guys have created this environment to go into that, because now you're setting the stage and the backbone of like, oh, okay, I know now what we need in order to create more vulnerability. And it doesn't just happen once. We're constantly working on creating vulnerability and safety. Yeah. And then,
I think it's just important to restate that a little bit. Is like, because when we ask that question, what makes it feel safe for you to be vulnerable? Now we know, like, I need to be present. Mm-hmm. Like I need to be really present. I need to maintain eye contact. You know, I need to not be distracted. I need to know that you have my full attention. I need to know that it's safe, like that you're really curious, that there's a kindness in your eyes, like that makes me feel safe. So like, okay, so we've really defined what keeps us in that window of tolerance. And then we want to say like, what happens for you when you feel intimately anxious with me?
Do you want me to answer?
Sure.
So what happens when you're feeling that intimacy anxiety? For me, it's in my body. I get all this tension in my body. And I start to like perseverate, like, oh my gosh, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? I don't know if it's going to happen. Performance anxiety comes up. Like, and then I used to just create arguments right before bedtime so then I wouldn't have to deal, but then I would feel really bad going to bed. But for me, the anxiety is very much in my body and it's somatic. Like I can feel it in my chest and my stomach and my neck and my shoulders.
Yeah.
How about what happens for you when you have intimacy anxiety? This is important really quick because people might not label it as anxiety. So you could even say, what happens during like tension around intimacy, or like how do you struggle with intimacy, right? Either physically or emotionally. You might not want to label it intimacy anxiety, but some people can, whatever you feel comfortable with. But like what happens for you, EJ?
I mean, I feel like this, like, it's like a block. I feel like this heaviness in my chest. I feel like this, like, it's like, you know, in those magic shows where there's like a person and they're cut in half and then they like separate them. Like I feel that, like, I feel like there's like a disconnection from my head and my heart gets heavy and goes away. And I'm just up in my head. And so what I feel like what happens for me is I'm desperately trying to just maintain, my composure, sort of.
Right.
Because I think maybe inside there's a little bit of like an angry child that's like pissed.
Yeah.
That's like feels hurt, feels rejected, feels unimportant, feels like I don't matter. And so I don't want that angry child to come out. Mm-hmm. So I just block them off. I just cut myself off. I'm fractured, which is probably then what makes you feel even more anxious, because if I'm totally sort of fractured internally, like how present can I be?
And that's important because so we're identifying what happens for us individually, right? How we're manifesting in our own bodies. But if we don't share it with the other person and communicate it, every time you're feeling it, we're now alone in the suffering. Our partner doesn't understand it. There is zero chance y'all are going to be able to relieve any of this anxiety. I know this now about you, right? Yeah. And I know this about me. And like before we are intimate, and if I'm feeling that anxiety, like 2 minutes of just like massaging me, like, but I share it with you. Like I'm getting really nervous. I feel nervous. That's happening, right? And I'm not sure if that anxiety happens for you, but it's just so important to share it when it's happening, because you guys get to now support each other in reducing the anxiety instead of keeping it there stuck and growing.
Well, it's interesting too, because this is such like a weird, like, it's like paradoxical, because emotional intimacy is really important to you, but I get more anxious about the emotional intimacy. Physical intimacy is really important to me, but you get more anxious about the physical intimacy.
Right.
Right? Because when you like were coming back to me about like what happens for me is like I tend to get more anxious about like trying to emotionally connect with you. Like when I can tell you're struggling and I want to be there for you, and I feel like I'm just ineffective in trying to. Like I see you like maybe like really being stressed out in the kitchen or something, and I really want to emotionally connect with you and let you know like I got you, and I get anxious about like, oh God, how do I connect with her, and how do I help her, and how do I let her know I'm here for her? Like I don't get as anxious about the physical stuff.
Right. Well, I think it's what we struggle with the most. We get anxious about the most. I was listening to this podcast today saying like, yeah, bad habits are easy to create and hard to live with. Good habits are hard to create, but easy to live with.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like that same, I don't know, thinking maybe. Okay. So let's go on to
yeah. So now we know something, right? Now we've gained some information. I know that if I'm not, I know that when Tarah feels intimately anxious, that she goes up into her head, that she might get critical, right? And then she knows that I might be cut off and disconnected.
You're a magic show.
Which is so interesting, right? Because the exact things we do in reaction to our intimate anxiety trigger one another. Right? If you get angry, I shut down. If I shut down, you get angry. It's like, ooh, what a perfect recipe. So now we've opened up about what happens. And so now it's like, okay, the third part is, well, what can we do to sort of create new patterns?
What are some ways I can make physical closeness more comfortable for you? Physical closeness is important because we're talking a lot about the emotional intimacy piece around the physical intimacy, but you also want to say, how can I make physical closeness feel really good for you? Because again, that idea where like, gosh, even if they touch me, that means I might have to do something that I'm really anxious about. We want to start like small, right? Like just small, like what feels safe, right?
So what can I do, Tarah, in those moments to make you feel more comfortable?
So this is going to be different for everybody, but because in my head, I'm like, oh, if I let EJ touch me at night, that means it's automatically, he's going to want to have sex. So now if you're touching me, right, and you're identifying, I just want you to know that I love you and I'm just touching you because I love feeling your body. There's no expectations from me. I know that you get anxious around that. Then I'm like, okay, massage away, buddy. And then whatever happens, happens. Now it's more organic, right?
Yeah.
But I just knowing that you know my anxiety, you're thinking about it, you're prioritizing my anxiety in those moments, like then it gets easier. And you don't have to say that every time now, because now we built enough safety where I know like you touching me doesn't mean it has to go anywhere. It's just love and it's an affectionate touch, but we had to start that routine. How about for you? I'm going to repeat the question, especially for our listeners. What are some ways that I can make physical closeness more comfortable for you?
Well, and I want to back up, like I want to make it about emotional intimacy and that like when we're trying to connect emotionally and it's difficult, and any act of kindness will help me.
Okay.
And physical touch is part of it, but not in a sexual manner. Like occasionally you will put your hands on my face and give me just a really nice little kiss. Mm-hmm. And that, I don't know, like I think you're the only person ever who's ever done that to me.
Oh my God, I'm going to kiss you so much more with my hands on your face.
And that there's something about that where like, I stop and I just feel like,
loved.
I just feel like really loved.
Honey,
and that
thank you for sharing that. I didn't even know that.
Well,
see what can happen in these conversations and these podcasts.
That is the beauty, right? That's it. Is that like all these things conversations we walk you through and blah, blah, blah. We do it week after week after week. They do work, I didn't know that, and so I can't tell Tarah something that I don't know. And when we have these types of moments together, I have the ability to realize something through her curiosity, through a safe space. I discover something and then I share it with her and then she knows it and then it's shared. And what is that? That is intimate, right?
Yeah.
Like we've created through this structure an intimate moment that makes us feel like, oh, we can fucking do this. Like we can actually do this.
So this is, I would say this is like one of the last questions then, just in the opening up of this, but it's like, what are some shared practices or rituals, routines that we can build together to strengthen this connection, right?
Yes.
What are some shared practices? I think one of the first ones should be like, we are going to tell each other when we're experiencing that anxiety or that disconnect. And I'm going to, right? And we're going to, whether it's every day checking in, whether it's at night, having pillow talk, but what are some shared practices that we can do that's going to strengthen our connection?
I love there's just so many tools out there, right? Like there's so many tools and we've used them over the years, but one of them is just like, find like a guided meditation, find something where it's about creating a sense of peace, a sense of calm, relaxation, and make that something you do before you go to bed.
One thing that I like to do, because guided meditations are great for me, but like in my own body at night, I do like a little body scan from my little head to my feet. And I try to relax every part of my body, right? Sometimes I'll actually start at my feet because they're like cold. And so I'll just like relax from my feet to my head. And then I'm just like, oh, okay. And I can kind of breathe out any extra tension that might still be there from the day because we go to bed and, we're kind of holding everything from the day. And some people fall asleep quickly and I'm not one of them. So
I am.
So I do the body scan or the breathing.
And then outside of, bedtime and the bedroom, after you've had this really nice conversation that we walked you through earlier, then it's creating like low stake intimate moments, right? That going for a walk and holding hands and little cuddling while you're watching a TV show and
massaging. I love
gentle,
massaging.
like just small. Like Tarah loves like when I just like rub the inside of her arm,
the wrist,
like just little ways to connect that you don't do with anyone else, because you're trying to build yourself back up. And if you can hold hands and break through that anxiety, then you're going to build towards, kissing and cuddling in bed and then having sex.
And so everything we're talking about is mindfulness, right? I'm going to have an intention in my mind and my body with my partner to calm my nervous system around intimacy. So whatever works for you, right? I know for me, it's, wow, EJ, I'm starting to feel anxious. Then he massages me. Then we can talk about it. Then he and I make each other more relaxed. But it's about how do I calm my nervous system? So then my nervous system now feels safe around the idea of intimacy, right? And you keep doing it. You just keep taking those steps more than you are right now. And your nervous system starts to create this new story, which is again going to be our next podcast, which is exciting. But it's like so moment to moment. And sometimes you'll miss it and you won't be great at it. And you'll forget to check in and you'll forget to be like, oh my God, I was so anxious today. That's okay. Just start the conversation. Start those little low stake intimacy moments. Start the non-sexual affections throughout the day to build that connection. And it will happen. But it's intentionality around the anxiety. Because if we don't get a grasp on it, it will hijack us and take over.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what we see with like 80% of the couples that come in.
So we really encourage,
and we're living proof that it works.
So we really encourage you to take this concept, intimacy anxiety, do some self-reflection, see if your partner is willing to engage in a conversation with you, walk through that little kind of conversation starter that we went through with you, and then start instating these like really small, consistent efforts to intimately connect with your partner. We also love to hear back from you all. We love to hear. We've been lucky enough to sort of have an uptick in people on our YouTube channel, sending comments on videos. So please keep that up. Please continue to send us emails, info@relationshiprenovation.com.
We want to know what you need, how best to support you. And so by doing that, we're like, oh, people really like the intimacy piece. So now we're going to do more of that. People really liked when we had our couple share their story. We're going to have more of that. So thank you so much for your engagement, and do not be in a place of resignation with intimacy. Be in a place of acceptance right now. Like, I accept we might be in a difficult place, but we're going to have tools and conversations to get out of it. As always, thanks so much for listening. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.